Be Proud here again today on this nortrac 35 XTD dozer. And I posted another video earlier about the 100-hour maintenance, kind of a quick review, how this dozer's performed and all that for me so far. But while I was changing the oil, I noticed a couple things and thought I'd want to share it. While you're fixing anything, while you're working on anything, keep an eye out for things that could cause problems in the future, to save you some time and headache. And so while I was putting oil, this is your oil fill cap, by the way. While I was putting oil into the motor, I saw this dry rot radiator hose. I thought, well, when I bring this thing in for its 150-hour maintenance, hopefully this thing lasts another 50 hours, I'll go ahead and swap out the radiator hoses. And while I'm at it, change out the coolant. And doing that while you're working on machinery, looking for problems, it saves you time, really, because now I can call the parts company and have them ship it. No rush freight. It'll probably be free shipping. It doesn't matter if it gets here tomorrow. It doesn't matter if it gets here next month. I'm going to get it. I'm going to have it in time. And so that's just, something to keep in mind while you're working on stuff. Keep an eye out. Check your rubber lines. Check your fuel lines. Look for bare wires. Things like that. And it'll save you in the long run. The other thing I did between the last video and this video was I tightened the tracks. If you remember from the last video, this track here was really loose. So I went ahead and tightened it. But I thought, for a first-time buyer, or, maybe you have this dozer and you just don't know how, or you lost the manual, whatever. It's a pretty simple procedure. Park it on a level, hard surface is what the manual calls for. I'm fortunate enough to I've converted this old barn into a shop and had a concrete floor in it. So, yeah, I'm lucky in that way. But if you're working out, in the field or whatever, take your blade, level you off a spot. Yeah, it'll take another 5 or 6 minutes, but it's worth it, because if this is not on level ground and you adjust this track, you might over-tighten it, or you won't tighten it enough, because the weight of the dozer, either being pushed forward or backward, will affect the droop on these tracks. So get it as level as possible. Put it on blocks. Do whatever you need to do. Put some timbers under the blade there and pick the front of the dozer up till you get it level. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways to do this. But anyway, this is a lock nut here, and I believe it was a 18 millimeter. And so you just loosen that. Don't take it out. Just loosen it. I loosened this one 5 or 6 full rotations. And that'll give you enough play to turn this. And it's weird. This is actually a little different. The rest of this dozer, literally everything is metric. But this right here is 1 1/4 inch, which I found kind of odd. So anyway, you turn this with your 1 1/4 inch, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. We all know that rule. And you tighten it. The manual calls for 3/4 inch. I'll be honest, I do not like to run my tracks that tight. I like about 3 inches of slop. I think that's what I mentioned in the last video, about 3 inches. And that way, you're not putting these tracks under so much stress. Another thing I touched on in the last video, actually I turned to the correct page in it and just didn't even notice, was the 10-hour break-in. And it's called the initial run-in 10-hour service. And this is the important one. This is the one that, you know, you run your dozer for 10 hours. And in that 10-hour period, they recommend that these are the, I believe the hours. Driving the dozer speeds, practical, turning left using brakes. Inspect, listen to engine, make sure, I believe these are the hours that you run it. It's been a while since I've done this. I believe I followed this to the hour. These are not minutes. If they are, I just overdid it. But for 20 hours, run this thing in first low. For 30 hours, run it in second low. The initial break-in is going to take you up past your 100-hour service. I'm going to double check on that. I don't want to tell you right or wrong, but that's how I did it. I used these as hours, not minutes. This just touches up on that. Your load percentage. How I did this was I used the blade. So first one, 40%, 1200 RPM max for 3 hours in first gear low range. So when I was moving dirt, I only used 40% of this blade. For the first few hours, I just barely scraped. You can actually kind of see my wear mark right here. It's a pain, I know, because you don't get much done in this first little bit, but trust me, it's worth it. You don't run into the problems that you run into on these reviews that you read on these. But anyway, back to the initial 10-hour service. Once you hit your 10 hours, change your transmission fluid. The plug, well, not the plug, but where you check it and fill it is right here. And this reminds me too, all the plugs and checkpoints and fill points on this dozer are painted in red. So that way they stick out. It's so you don't accidentally turn the wrong bolt. Here are your final drives where you fill and drain and check. Your transmission plug, when you drain this, will actually be right below your gear shift. On the bottom, that's the side of the transmission. Right underneath there's a red plug, and that's the one you remove. And I forget the capacities. But change that, and you actually don't have to change that again, I think, till the 200-hour point. Change your oil, change your filter, inspect all fasteners. I kind of skipped that just because there were no signs of anything being loose. The one thing I did check, though, was my blade, all these bolts here. The torque specs are in the manual as well. I didn't fool with the covers. The ROP, your roll protection, I checked them. And everything I checked did not need retorqued. They all clicked where they were supposed to be at. So, you take that with a grain of salt. Inspect free travel on the track brake. If you're free travel, what they mean by free travel is how far this moves before it engages. And these are still in really good, the travel's still really good on both of them. But where you would adjust that is on these linkages. Try to get my hand out of the way. I don't know if you can see that bolt there or not, but you loosen that bolt and you turn that turnbuckle, and that's how you will adjust your free travel. I haven't had to do that yet. I'd say for the manual's purpose, it's just a formality. And then lubricate the dozer. That's something you should always do anyway, before you start any day or at the end of every day. Of course, every 10 hours of operation, you have your general maintenance, which covers the greasing and lubrication. The one thing this manual is not good at is, It's a picture manual, but they do not do a good job at marking and labeling the grease points. Just on one side here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. General rule of thumb, by the way, anywhere you have a pin or moving part swiveling, look for a grease fitting because you'll have one. I already lost count. 9, 10, 11, and 12. So there's 24 to 22 grease fittings on this dozer that are easy to get to. There are grease fittings under the chassis too, which I just don't feel like getting on my creeper and going under there to show you. But you've got 5 just under this this transmission and hydraulic pump area. There's 5 grease fittings under there. Just a general rule of thumb, if it moves or rotates or spins, it's got a grease fitting. And it's going to need lubrication. But yeah, so that'll wrap that up. And again, if you have any questions on these, let me know. I probably won't have this one in the shop for a while, but I will be posting more videos on more equipment that I have when I bring it in for their maintenance, kind of go over them. And we'll talk to you later.